stand on this mountain and I look down and see a world I was once underneath. I stand on this mountain and I look down. My mind knows more than it once knew. Then I knew. Then I knew. Then I knew. Then I knew. Now you're here. You're here. You're there. You're there. Now everywhere with me. If this is lost, then there's no place I'd rather be than found and see. Found and see. I climb down this mountain and I look around just to see that everyone used to be me. I climb down this mountain and I look around, my mind embracing more than the truth, than the truth, than the truth, than the truth, than the truth. Now you're here, you're here, you're there. Now everywhere with me. If this is lost, then there's no place I'd rather be than found me seen. Found me seen. I once was blind, but now I see the beauty of the world before me. Now you're there. Now everywhere with me. If this is lost, then there's no place I'd rather be. Now you're here, you're there. Now everywhere with me. If this is lost, then there's no place I'd rather be than found me seen. Found me seen. Found me seen. Found me seen.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good. How about you?
Doing good, thanks.
I'm excited tonight. Welcome in, everybody. It might take a few
My
minutes
mic
to get up.
works.
Yeah, it works. You can hear me okay?
I hear you.
Perfect. I'm so excited to have you on tonight.
Well, thanks. Glad to be here.
So for everybody that's here, many of you guys know that we have the founder of Peace River Search and Rescue with us tonight. And he has an amazing organization. They do amazing work. How long have you guys had the organization?
We started in 2005, so we've been going for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
We formed officially as a nonprofit in 2010, and so we could become a nonprofit and try to raise money so that we could, pay for radios and training and all the things you got to pay for. So now it's insurance. We're fighting to pay for the insurance. So we took a big hit on the insurance bill this year. So trying to get that taken care of. But,
And guys, the link is in the description, and I'll also grab it and put it in the chat. There is a secured donation
Yeah.
that you can donate to, because we want to make sure that we don't lose this organization. You guys do amazing work. Y'all travel all over the U.S., right?
Oh, we travel everywhere. Yeah, I've been out on the road. I can be out on the road from anywhere to 1 to 3 weeks at a time working cases. I was looking at your lineup of cases, going here, and I think I've worked on just about all of them at one time or another. So I was like, yeah, I remember that case. I remember that one. So still working on several of them. But we supply very well trained people, and I do a lot of work for Dr. Bass out of University of Tennessee. So he is a guy who was one of the founders and curators of the decomposition facility, which is also known as the Body Farm. And so they do a lot of research there. I'm privy to learning a lot of that. So the people on the team have a lot of training in matters of forensics. So when we show up on scene, we have a lot of skill. And we try to bring that at no cost to these families that are struggling, and also to law enforcement. Because a lot of law enforcement agencies out there are very small agencies. I noticed that you had Jared McCulloch's there. We were working on that last month. And you've got a sheriff with one deputy. It's very much Mayberry RFD out there. And there's just no help in trying to get these things done. So we have to go step in and see if we can offer some assistance and try to help keep these cases moving forward if we can't find them. And so that's what Peace River does. Outside of our normal search and rescue duties, we supply Southwest Florida with what we call a live find search and rescue team, which is when we get a call from law enforcement, whether it's either from Pinellas down to Collier County. Our home's in Charlotte County, so we get most of our calls come from Charlotte. But we have a wandering autistic person that's gone, or we have a dementia person that's escaped, or something like that, and they can't find them. So they call us, and then we go out and assist. So those are our live find duties. Plus we have the disaster response, because we're sitting around right now waiting to see if these hurricanes are going to visit Florida, and hopefully they won't need us this year. So
I'm with you. They can stay in the ocean.
Oh, I know. I think with these two out there right now, they're going to miss us. Thank goodness. But we always seem to go out with a bang now. I don't know if you notice here in Florida, it's really quiet the first half of the year, and then the last month and a half, it's like everything happens then. So all of a sudden we'll have 15 hurricanes, and we're like, what is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
And on the West Coast, I don't worry so much about like the ones in the Atlantic, because they got to cut across Florida to get here. So by the time they get to us, they're kind of knocked down a little bit. But when they start over on Mexico on the Yucatan and they come across that way, all that water they push into our neighborhood, and we can end up with anywhere from 10 to 20 feet of water in my neighborhood all of a sudden, and that is really, really difficult. So that's where we got in trouble. My house got damaged during Hurricane Ian, so we had to deal with the flood and deal with rebuilding the house, and it took about a year and a half, I think, to get the house put back together. So technically, I built my house twice. So I'm like, wow, it's interesting. So it should be. Hopefully, this will be a quiet year for us. We've earned one, I think. So.
I totally agree. We really have, because with like Ian, you had homes in the city that I live in, right outside of Orlando, that were waist deep damage up inside the homes, and not normal places that flood. And so we have no shortage of retention ponds around here, but it just was totally unexpected.
If you know the soil charts and how the land works in Florida, everything from Orlando south is pretty much a sandbar. It's just one big sandbar, and then everything north is kind of clay mud and what they call Mayaca pine sand, and some clay in it. So until you get to Georgia, then it gets really red clay when it gets up there. But everything lower that is just, we're just living on a sandbar. So one day, the ocean's going to take it back. It's just going to flood now. That'll be it. It'll all be back underwater again. It's out right now, but it's interesting because we do a lot of assisting with archaeological digs and things, and especially with the cadaver dogs. We have a drone unit that has specialized cameras, near infrared and different angstroms of light and filters that we used. We used them mostly for finding clandestine graves where people have been murdered and buried and been out there for a while. We usually use those devices to go find those graves along with the dogs. But when we're not using them for that, a lot of the archaeologists call us in and we help them work on these really old Paleo-Indian. And there's a lot of activity right now on the 1800s and stuff like that, pioneer areas that we're working on. So we've been using a lot of NIR and FLAIR and NDVI and stuff like that out there, trying to locate some of these old homesteads and stuff and graveyards that are out there. So a lot of African American graves. We call them slave graves, but that's what they were at the time. But a lot of African American graves, and so that can be marked for historical purposes. But so that's just some of the stuff that we get ourselves wrapped in. But out on the water, when we're out there working like with FGCU, we were doing a dive thing last year, helping out with an archaeological find, and they actually found some old paleo graveyards off the shore from where I'm at here in Charlotte County, out about 10 or 15 miles off. So that all used to be land out there where people lived. And now over the last, 2,000 years, the water's now up here where we're at. But it used to be way out there. And then people were living out there at one time, but they don't anymore. So
wow.
I know people keep talking about climate change. Well, it changes all the time. God only knows what's coming next, down the road. So it's interesting. But I'm big into the historical stuff because I find that stuff just fascinating.
Well, I'm the same way. People don't realize the rich history that Florida has.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, they know it for its tourism. It's beaches and sand, and in all reality, it's so much deeper than that.
Yeah, it's amazing. These Paleo-Indian graves, when we get into these Paleo-Indian sites, going back, 5,000, 10,000 years, and the dogs, believe it or not, cadaver dogs can still find those areas when they're out there, which is one of the side problems that we have with cadaver dogs. They find everything. One of the first finds that my dog Dama had when she was starting her career off, working for a sheriff's department up north of us here, and she was alerting into a depression in the dirt, and we had been looking for a recently suicided girl who's had mental illness problems, and we were trying to find her, but Damon found this depression, and we marked it and told the detective about it. And I said, I don't think it's related to your case, but it could be something. I don't know what it is. Could be some other case. We got other missing person cases going on. Could be something like that. And so they went back there because they didn't find her. They hadn't found her yet. So they decided to go back and dig it up. And they had the university come up from USF. And then the professor called me and she said, guess what? And I said, what? She says, your dog found a 180-year-old pioneer grave out here. So,
oh, wow.
So, Dama's first find was a pioneer grave. And that's a problem we have in Florida. We do find a lot of historical grave sites out here when we're working with dogs. So it could be something related to the case that we're in, and it could be something else. We just never really know what we're finding when we go out.
That's amazing. I didn't know. I knew that they could find historical graves, but you're talking like historical.
Oh yeah. Well, these paleo graves that we've been finding, we work with the state archaeologists and with the Air Force, because they have several air bases in Florida where they're expanded out into the woods, like in Ocala and stuff like that. And they have to check them around and make sure that there's culturally correct. And we work with them locating remains. But we found some Paleo-Indian sites that were over 5,000 years old out there, and some of them were even older than that. We were finding saber-toothed tigers in there. We We were finding all kinds of very old animals that we don't see anymore. Elephants and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, wow.
Because at one time all that Florida was connected to everything, and then all the continents kind of broke apart. But there's still, you can find amazing animals, still buried down in here, and it's amazing. I mean, it's incredible to me. And it's funny, they did the DNA on the Paleo Indians, and they almost have no relation to us whatsoever. I mean, it's almost like it was a whole different species of humans, So it's fascinating. It's just fascinating stuff, and trying to figure out where everything came from and the history of all of it. But it's very neat.
That's amazing. And see, when people think search and rescue team, they don't realize how deep you guys are going into this, and
yeah. Well, we have
time for the body
resources.
farm, and that's
Well, the cadaver thing, it wasn't. It just kind of clicked. I had been working with working my dogs, and Florida and Peace River had gotten a good reputation as having good dogs, and this going back to 2010, 2015 and stuff. And I'd left the old training models that had come up in the 1980s up through 2000, because we had a real problem with cadaver dogs. They were queuing off the handlers, something terrible. They had more misfires than they had fines, and it was a real problem. And so I left that model. I started training differently. I trained under some of the best trainers in the country, from Randy Hare out to California. I even went up and spent some times with the Canadians and learned how our CMP does their dogs, and kind of picked the best that I liked and what was working. And I came up with kind of my own method for how I train the dogs. And we were doing really well with it because we had proofed them off the handlers. The dogs were working independently of the handlers. They were not being influenced by any biases or prejudices that were going on with the handler. It kind of shifts and moves, and the dog thinks, oh, there must be something here, and they alert, and we'd gotten away from all that. So I got a call from Dr. Vass out of the blue, and I always knew who he was because he was the guy who did the original study on decomposition. He published all the papers on it. I mean, he was the guy. He knew more about cadaver than anybody else on the planet. And so I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm talking to this guy, right? I can't believe I'm talking to this guy. And so he says, I hear you got good dogs. I got this case up in outside Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I need some help with it. I was wondering if you guys could come out and help us. And I said, sure. I was glad to. Any chance to work with Dr. Vass would be great. And so we met him up, and we went and worked this really old cold case that was 30 years old. And we had to work with him on some of his techniques on how he finds graves. And then we had the cadaver dogs working, and I had Nixie, my dog, at that time. And we ended up we found the site where the murder victims had been buried, and they'd been buried that we were digging down, trying to find the graves, and we were down several feet. And then we realized one of the local farmers came over and was talking to us. He says, well, when this river overflows here, the Mississippi overflows, it always dumps about a foot of mud on it every time when it does that. So we had to go back and figure out how many times that had happened between the time that the guy was murdered and now we're here, right? So we realized that the guy's probably about 10 feet down instead of 5 feet, 5 or 6 feet. So we got backhoes out there, and we were working with the dogs and digging and sifting and going through the whole thing. We finally got down to where the guy was. Found all that was left of him was a cigarette lighter and some teeth, and that was all that was left.
Oh, wow.
He had a very specific cigarette lighter that was personal, which was his. So we were able to identify that, and then they were identification off the teeth that they recovered. And so he was eventually identified, which made the brother very happy because he paid for the dig and everything. So it was successful, but it was quite a mess getting down there. That was the first time I ever worked with him. And I was just amazed at what he could do and what he knew. And he and I had pizza and beer one night towards the end of it. And we were downtown Baton Rouge, and I talked to her. I said, I got this real problem in Florida. It's called grave migration. And, people, the classic burial in Florida is murder victim is 3 feet down, 20 yards off from the road, and they don't go any deeper than 3 feet because the water table's there. They start running into water, so they don't dig them any deeper than that. But the bodies soak in the water, and the decomposition gets in the water, and it spreads it out. So the cadaver dogs have a really hard time locating the graves because the odor may be popping up 200 yards away from where the body is, the actual grave shaft is. And so we were having difficulties finding the grave shafts because of this problem. And he says, oh yeah, I'm very aware of it. And we started talking about techniques, and he started showing me some different things we could do to try to change that around and not have that problem or overcome the problem that we were dealing with there. And so through that, we got to be really good friends. And then he would send me stuff. Well, hey, try this with your dogs and see how this works, and try this and try that. And so we started working back and forth. So here I am 15 years later after working with Dr. Bass, and I'm like their guy now. So I go out and do all their work for them, and they keep me pretty busy. So, but I've learned a lot. I'm amazed at what I know. What I picked up over the last 15 years. I've probably forgotten more about decomposition than most handlers ever learn, but it's a fascinating thing to me, and so it's been a really interesting ride, over the last 20 years working in this field.
That is amazing.
So
Lisa says, how did you overcome that? I don't know if he wants to give out his secrets.
Well, usually when we start getting into grave migration, the usual classical thing that happens with a dog is that the dog alerts and he downs or sits or whatever, and they put a marker there, and then they dig there in that spot. And the assumption is always made with the cadaver dog that the dog is alerting on the strongest odor, which he usually does. But that doesn't mean where the odor is coming up is where the body is, because odor will find its easiest way up. So if the soil's really compact over the body, it'll come way off to the side somewhere. So that brought in GPR. People started bringing in ground penetrating radar because that was trying to help us, find the grave shaft. And GPR works great in cemeteries, and it works great on roads, and it works great in flat, smooth areas, but it doesn't work well in the woods because you're bumping over tree roots and you're doing stuff like that, and that creates all kinds of misfires on the display. And you really have, even though you're trying to push over, you really can't tell if it's accurate or not. So GPR was kind of a pipe dream that just didn't work out too well in the woods. It worked great in some other applications, but not that one. But so we had to come up with different ideas, and now we have soil sampling that we do. We do coring, we do soil sampling, we do probing. We've come up with a bunch of other alternate techniques that we use to try to find the grave shaft, because that's the most difficult thing. Finding grave shafts in search is the most difficult thing we do. So it takes a lot of time, and most of the time, most of your law enforcement guys, they're not. Most of your detectives are always in a hurry, and they want to hurry up and get it done and get the dog and get it done. And I'm like, it's going to take a couple of days for us to find the grave shaft out there. We got to take our time and find it. They're not happy about that. They want to just run the dog, have them alert, and say that's it. And maybe 1 out of 10 times it'll work that way.
Right.
The rest of the time, you're going to be poking around and looking and trying to figure out where the grave shaft is. And so it's kind of trying to change the paradigm. And one of the things that happens now with detectives, they don't get the forensic training in cop school like they used to. They used to be really sharp when it came to forensic matters, and they're not anymore because they don't get the schooling anymore. They have to go outside of their departments and take extra classes and seminars and stuff like that to try to get the training so that they can be more fluent in forensic matters. And they put a lot of that over to CSIs. The crime scene techs come out, and a lot of them are not super well schooled. A lot of them are great, but a lot of them aren't. And you have to, it's always funny. A lot of times I end up being the guy with all the no, so they're like, don't do that. Wait, let's try this instead. If you want to collect that evidence, we better do it this way instead of that way. And so it's funny, but I'm hoping that things will get better. The training will get better out there. There's so much to know. The science has brought so much to the table that it's a very big field now to understand all the different techniques and ways that they find evidence and collect evidence. And in our field, since we're always dealing with missing people, the ways a lot of times they could be suicided out there, they could be murdered and just dumped, or they could be buried, or they could be dumped in water. And water hides are incredibly difficult. And that's, we've been doing some work in that area lately too, trying to, increase our finding rate in the water. Because most of the time when I'm in water, I'm a diver and I work a lot of forensic dives. And it's most of the time the water that I'm in the visibility is almost zero. I can't even see my hand in front of my face when I'm down there. So it's all tactile and running our hands around, trying to see if we can touch something or feel something that feels like it could be evidence or something related to our case. And then bringing it up to your mask and trying to see if that's what it is. And then, sometimes when we run into human remains, we actually just literally bump into it when we're going along there and go, oh, and then you get your face right up on top of it and go, yeah, I think that's him, and then you have to mark it, and then you got to try to bring him up, which is very difficult to do in those conditions. So that led us to some new techniques that we've been working on with sonar, and then we also introduced the otter program. So we have otters now that we've trained up to work with us underwater, and they're very good at helping us find stuff down there. So they've been proven out to do well, and we're very proud of Splash and Squeakers and some of the other ones that have come through the program. But so it's moving forward. So that's always been one thing I've been accused of is not being afraid to step out of the box and try something different. So
I love it that you guys you have all these tools in your toolbox and the many years of experience. And I follow you on Twitter. I have DM'd you many times in the past and been like, this is what's going on, and you're always there and you're always on top of it. But I think the first post that I saw, and I was like, a rescue otter?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. We had started messing around with them in 2020, and I had the idea back around 2017, 2018, I guess it was. And I'd read an article about otters being able to work odor problems underwater. And I thought, really? I've trained scent dogs for a living. Maybe I could work with an otter and see if it would work, And so I was given the opportunity to work with 2 otters up at the aquarium in Sarasota, and I went to work there. And they tested out really well. And so then we moved forward and we decided we'll go ahead and see if we can actually make it work. And the aquarium's like, you can't have our otters. We're keeping them. You're going to have to get your own otters, So I had to go through the process of getting otters. And so we ended up, I sent out emails and letters to a lot of the zoos in the United States that had otter displays. And I know a lot of them breed, and they, give otters away to other zoos and other display, place organizations. And I said, would you consider donating some otters for us so that we could, move this program forward? And I had a zoo owner from Phoenix, Arizona called me. She called me up, Morgan, and she said, is this real? You're really going to do this? And I said, yeah, we're going to do it. And she says, okay. And so she said, come get one. I got an otter for you. Come get him. And so I drove to Phoenix and I picked him up, brought him back, and that was Splash. And he went operational about 3 months ago. We started putting him in the field. We had trained him up. He was doing really well. And I put a note out to my detective friends saying, hey, I got this crazy thing I'm doing. I'm looking for some cases, or if you got some missing person cases that are in water and you want them searched, I'd like to do it for you. And we don't charge anything for it. So, just if you don't think it'll mess your case up or anything, if you want to give it a shot, I'd like to try. I was surprised at the number of people that sent stuff back to me. Like, yes, I have 3 cases I want to talk to you about. I got 2 cases I want to talk to you about. I got this case. I got that case. And so I just started going and answering the emails. I said, tell me what you got. Let's see if it's something that we can work on. And I got a list now. I mean, Splash is basically booked out until February, I guess, next year. So he's got caseloads. I just took in 2 more cases today for him to work. So we're, yep, there he is. That's my critter. And so we're, he's going to be busy starting in October. He's going to be out probably every week, I think, working somewhere. So I'm looking forward to working with him and teaching him. And he's already had 4 successes so far. So we're very, very proud of him, and we'll keep him going. And he works in conjunction with the dogs. I mean, the cadaver dogs work on water as well. But the problem with the dog is, and the reason that we started the program with the otter was this issue of human remains that decompose in the rivers and the lakes. And we do a lot of cold case work, 10, 15, 20 years old, and these bodies decompose, depending on the temperature of the water, they decompose fairly quickly. And then the bones sink down into the mud and they get lost down there and you can't find them. And the dive team won't find them. Now the dogs are still alert on them. Surface, and the dogs are still barking and throwing a fit, and they get a big change of behavior, and there's something here, but then they put the divers down, they can't find anything, and so then the case just goes cold, and they blame the dogs, and they do well, those things that happen. And I said, we got to come up with a different way of doing this. And so that was the introduction of what the otter was supposed to do. So what Splash's job is after we've surveyed from the surface, we've had the sonar going, we've got the dogs have started alerting in a certain area. We've marked that area off, and then we'll go back and the dive. Either I'll be in dive gear. We usually have 2 divers there, and then we have a working diver and a safety diver, and then we anchor the boat. We put Splash in. He goes and finds it. Comes back and tells me he finds it. He squeaks. He does that otter squeak. He does a very happy otter squeaking thing he does, and sounds like R2-D2 from Star Wars, So he does a lot of real happy squeaks, and then we hook onto him, and then he goes back down, and then we follow the line down, and then we get down to the bottom, and then we mark the area. He's down there in the bottom. He'll be digging like where it's coming up, and so then we will mark it, and then we put him back, and he's done. His job is done at this point. And then we have a grid we put down on top of it, and then we have trawls, and we just start going through it and down into the muck until we start hitting the bones, and then we start recovering the bones and bringing it back in, and then we inventory the bones to make sure we got everything. And then we turn it all into the ME, and that's it. We're off to the next case after that. And so that's what Splash's job was and is. Then it became kind of morphed a little bit because we had other agencies in Florida that would call and say, we've got this person missing. He fell off the boat. We can't find him. Can you bring Splash out? And I'm like, well, he's really not supposed. He's more for forensic recovery than he is for that kind of recovery. And so they said, no, we really need help. So we started going out, and it started working for that too. So he's got his job kind of morphed out a little bit. And, nobody's done this before. I'm the only guy that's out here trying to see if we can get this to work. So we're kind of learning the job as we go along and figuring out what they can and can't do. Make adjustments in their training and in their protocols as we go along to try to, figure out if we can make this a good tool or not. So as of now, he's doing well, and we're going to continue to move forward with it. And keep working these cases that we've got to work, and hopefully Splash will have a nice cumulative vitae before long, or CV as they call it, before too long, and maybe otters will become a thing, and you'll see a lot of otters issued out to search teams, before too long to do recovery work, but we'll see how it works out.
It's amazing that you even had the idea to use a search otter. When I was telling, when I did my little short video and I put it out to let people know, I was like, we're not only going to have the founder, we're going to have the man that has trained the one and only Splash. Yeah. And I got a lot of feedback, especially on TikTok. People are like, an otter? Really? I need to hug him. I was like, I feel you because I need to hug him too. And I've seen video. He is a snuggle bug.
Oh yeah, otters are they're really neat critters. They work on a solar clock, so they get up at sunrise and go to bed at sunset. So he comes in like he should be coming in right about now, but I'm on still some sun out there, but still some daylight. But he isn't ready yet. You know, he'll start squeaking at the door when he wants to come in, and then he sits on the couch with me, he watches TV, and then when he's had enough, he goes to sleep. And he always sleeps with me, and so he gets down by my feet and sleeps down there, or he comes up and sleeps by my head, one or the other. And then he usually gets up about 4 or 5 in the morning, and then he wants to go out and go swimming again. So I feed him and put him out, and he's out there. And then I go out around 8 o'clock and we start training, and we're on a work for food program. He is a wild animal. He's not domesticated. I always have to remind people that, as cute as he is a wild animal. And so he's not a dog. They don't have, dogs are a product of breeding programs. So all that genetics has been bred into them to work with people and to please people and do all that. Well, none of that's been bred into the otter. I mean, he can get up in the morning and go, I'm not working, the hell with you, and you're like, all right, how am I going to get you working today? So we work for food, right? If he wants to eat, otters have to eat 4 times a day. So that's how they regulate their body temperature and everything, is by eating. They're very much regulated with their body temperature. They have to control that, and that's through eating. And we have a problem when we do medical on him, because we have to sedate him in order to, examine his teeth and go over him in detail to make sure he's okay. We have to knock him out, basically, so he doesn't rip us to shreds when we go in there to hold him down. And his temperature usually runs about 103 to 104. The minute we give him the stuff to knock him out, his temperature spikes to 106, just like that. So we have to put cold packs on him and stuff to keep his temperature regulated. And we have to keep monitoring his temperature all the time to make sure that he's doesn't cook, or his brain doesn't cook, while he's under sedation. So they're very, they have to be fed. So I use that food as my motivator. I say, look, if you don't work with me, I'm going to go back in the house and you're not going to get fed, And so he knows as soon as he sees me in the morning. Matter of fact, he's so good about the time now that if I'm not out there by 8 o'clock in the morning, he starts tearing up the lanai. He starts knocking his crates over. He starts knocking the running wheel over. He starts throwing a little fit out there. He's like, are you going to come out here and work me and feed me or what? So I have to go out there and try to be on time with him, or he has his little hissy fits when I don't get out there. But,
that's precious. That's precious. So we know who the boss really is.
Yeah, well, he kind of is. I mean, he's taken over, and he even take over my wife's affections, because she's not really a super animal person, but she's gotten very attached to Splash. So she flat out told me, she said, something happens to you, I'm keeping the otter. And I laughed. I said, well, good. I'm glad I've got a home, if something happens to him. So, but he's taken everywhere he goes. He brings attention. So we found out, we weren't, I wasn't going to, even working for the detectives, I wasn't going to put out the information that we were using the otters, because initially when they found out we were training otters before, when they brought it up, the animal rights groups came after us big time, and they were sending me all kinds of hate mail and all this stuff. How dare you do this? They're not living their best life. And I used to challenge them. I said, you can come out here and see what he's doing. I have nothing to hide here. You want to come out and see what he's doing? Come on. You can come visit. I mean, I would have invited you, if you're in the area, stop by and visit with Splash. You're welcome to come over and hang out with Splash if you want to. But he's got the best medical. He gets the best food. He's taken very well good care of. He gets plenty of exercise, plenty of enrichment, as they call it, where he's training all the time. He's always getting tested and stimulated and working. And then when he wants to come inside and lay under my feet or lay in my lap and sleep, he comes in whenever he wants to, and does that. So he rules the roost, pretty much as he wants to. He travels well now. He He's got a crate. He sits up in the shotgun seat of my van, and he rides
cool.
up there with me. And he's very popular at rest areas. I get out at rest areas, and I let the dogs, I'm one of the bad people. I let my dogs go off leash. I'm in the one back area, and there's nothing there. I just let the dogs go. And then I get Splash out, and he runs around with the dogs out there, and going to the bathroom and everything out in the with the dogs. And then I always get people come over and go, "Wow, that's the biggest ferret I've ever seen." I'm like, it's not a ferret, it's an otter. And they're like, "An otter? What are you doing with an otter?" And he's very friendly, and he goes up and meets everybody. And I had this one time we were coming back through, I think it was Colorado, and we stopped at a rest area, very barren rest area, and I had him out, and he was going to the bathroom. Dr. Bass was traveling with me at that time. And this elderly lady pulled up next to my van, and she gets out, she's walking up because she's going to use the restroom, and Splash runs over to her and greets her. And she stopped, and she looks at him, and she reaches over and pets him on the head, and he's squeaking to her and making noises. And she started crying, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she says, "I always wanted to meet an otter." And she said, "I can't believe I met one in a rest area." We started laughing. And
That's awesome.
she spent about a half hour with him. After she got out of the bathroom, she came over to where we were at, and she sat there, and Splash was very kind to her and stayed with her. And so she got to have her bucket list thing. She got to meet the otter and spend time with her. And so he invokes a lot of that with people. So I consider him an ambassador for the otters, and so I let people meet him and have their little experience with him. He's very good with autistic kids. I'm very popular with autistic homeschool kids. I get calls from moms probably every month, and they have a child that wants to meet Splash, and can they come over? And I said, sure, just bring him over. Let me, they spend about an hour and a half with him or whatever. And Splash plays with them, and then they go home. So he always treats the autistic kids very gently, which I'm surprised because he treats me like crap. He's nice to me, but he bites me when he wants something. He never does it to the kids. He always treats them very, very nice when he's there. So he just seems to know. He seems to know what's that they're special. So we do a lot of Cub Scout meetings, and we do a lot of. I'm going to save my grandkids next week. On Friday, I'm going to their school with Splash. Because my granddaughter had gone in and was telling them about how she swims with her otter and plays with the otter during the summer. And the teacher didn't believe her, and she was very upset about that. And she thought she was making it all up. So we had to call in and say, no, it's true. She does have an otter that she plays with. And so we'll even bring him in so the class can meet him. And so they took me up on it. And so now we're going in next Friday. We're going to go in there.
That's awesome. Can you imagine being
get to meet the otter, spend some time with Splash? So.
Right. That's like the kid that went to school and said, his uncle was Superman.
Yeah.
And then Superman went to school with him, and the kids were all like, "Oh, I get it."
So I thought, well, what the heck, But it's funny. But somebody's right. Other animals are smarter than we are, and I have to say that I think animals, in a lot of ways, are smarter than we are. They have better mental habits than we do. I think, especially dogs. They don't hold on to stuff. They very quick to forgive, and they live in the moment. They don't drag all that past and stuff with them. They just keep moving forward. And I always say I wish people were more like that, because they just get too hung up in too much junk, too much drama.
I prefer the dogs to people.
Yeah, and Splash is very much that way. He's just an otter. He does what otters do, But he's turned out to be really great. He's people ask me, when this video came out that made it on the internet of Splash working with me, and we were doing a recovery for a woman who had been dumped in a retention pond, and she'd been there for about a year and a half. Her remains are down in the bottom, and so I'm going along with a boogie board behind me, and Splash is off to my right. He's swimming, searching and doing his search thing, And the problem I have with him, he's had this problem ever since we've trained him. He thinks I'm so dumb that he has to bring each part back to me individually. So he'll go off and find a finger bone or a foot bone or, you know, a rib or something bone, and he'll bring it back and hand it to me. I'm like, don't hand it to me. Show me where it is, you know. So I have to make him send him back. So I have this boogie board that I carry behind me, and what he does is he goes along and he'll find something, and he'll bring the bone up and put it on the boogie board and lay it there. And so I'll look at it and I'll go, yeah, that's human. And then I'll give him a piece of meat. I give him some salmon. His working treat is farm raised salmon. He doesn't like ocean salmon. It has to be farm raised or he doesn't like it. And so he's very Grey Pouponish about that thing. So we get him his farm raised salmon, and so I give him that, and then he'll go back and get another bone and bring it back, and another bone and bring it back. And I have to look to see where he's going so I can follow him over there and then, try to do that. Now it's different when I'm in scuba. When I have the scuba gear on, he comes up and he grabs my mask and lets me know that he's found something. So he'll come up, I'll feel him tugging on my mask, and I'll see his little butt, moving in front of my mask. And so I will grab him, and then I have a line that I put on him, and he'll swim back to where he's found it, and then I just follow the line back, so until I get there. He's laying on top of whatever it is, so he'll be laying with means or whatever, and then we just, from there, I cut him loose, and I send him back to the boat, and he goes back, and then we take care of the crime scene underwater at that point, so secure the scene, but that's what he does. And so he's very, he's been good about it. I mean, he loves to work with people. The nice thing about hunters or otters is they love to hunt in packs. And so basically I'm just a pack member. And so he's hunting with me. He's going out on a hunt with me. And so that's very natural for them. So we're just taking the natural tendencies of the otter and we're putting it to work for us. And they're very social. They like to be around people. So, and he's gotten used to being around cops, and detectives. So he'll be around, we'll have 5 or 6 FDLE agents there, and he'll be hanging around with them. And of course, the girls are all petting him and taking care of him. He's quite the girl magnet. So, we have to, he brings in a lot of ladies. And he hangs out, and they all get their picture taken with him and everything. So he does his social media thing. But as I call it.
I'm sure he's like, no, don't love on me.
Well, he can be like that. I mean, he likes people who can pet him, but don't pick him up. I always tell people, don't be in a hurry to pick him up. He'll let you know if he wants to be picked up or not. Because otters are flight animals. They're runners. They're not fighters. They talk about them being boisterous and fighting or picking fights with people. And the only times otters will fight, the 2 reasons that I know of that they'll ever pick fights with people or get boisterous with people is if they've got a den nearby and they've got babies, they're going to come after you and tell you to get away. You've gotten too close. I don't want you any closer. I want you to get away. And they'll come after you for that. Or they've gotten rabies and they're going rabid and they're getting a little nutty, so you've got to stay away from them. But usually if the otter's coming up and telling you to give them space, just give them space, Get away from him. He just doesn't want you to get any closer because he's got babies nearby, and so they're very protective of their families. So they're not called packs. I always have to remind myself. An otter grouping is called a romp. It's not called a pack. So they have romps.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I get corrected by the animal experts all the time about that. So I'm always trying to correct myself so I can try to speak correctly of it. But I have dogs and I have packs, and I'm pretty sure that Splash thinks he's part dog. So, he's been hanging around with my dogs for so long now that he's picked up a lot of dog habits. But he gets along really well with Dutch, my older dog. He likes to hang out with Dutch. And some of the videos I put up for him was it's usually Dutch that he hangs out with. I have a new dog coming up, Nova, and she's working her way up. She's getting to be a good dog, but she's all energy. She's what we call the crackhead. She's just like, she goes from 0 to warp 10 all the time. There's nothing in between. and she gave a Malinois a run for its money. And she is a little too much energy for Splash. She's like, all right, get away from me. You're just kind of freaking me out.
You do too much.
Too much, yeah. No. So, but he was famous for a couple of weeks there. We were at the one of the big crime conventions, and we brought Splash out. They'd asked us to come, and they'd asked us to bring Splash. So I went and we got Splash out, and immediately we had like 100 people at our booth. It was unbelievable what happened, and everybody wanted to touch him, pet him, meet him, And so a lot of videos went out over social media. Splash, meeting an otter at the crime convention and everything, and it just became a thing. And then all of a sudden, I was getting all these emails and all these inquiries about the otter, and so now he's a thing, I guess that's what you call it. But it wasn't planned. We didn't plan to be, out there doing this kind of thing. We just we're social media thing. And I'm not very good at social media, so if you're on my page, my Splash page, I do try to get some videos up here and there, but they stink, and I'm terrible at it. So I apologize for that time.
You do great. You do great. I loved watching.
A content person who knows what they're doing, and they'll do that kind of stuff.
His videos of the pool, the trainer pool, it was amazing. Yeah. You do great.
But a lot of the videos of him in the pool, that's my 8-year-old grandson that's doing the video work. So that's why the camera's bouncing around a lot, because he's trying to paddle and hold the camera, the GoPro at the same time. But I've been trying to do a lot of study on how otters locate things underwater, because we initially thought it was because they were using odor as their main primary way of finding things. And we've actually found out that's not true. They do use odor. They use a bubble technique, but they're a close cousin to both the wolverine, and the other cousin they have is the platypus. And they're very close genetically to platypuses. And platypuses have an electrosensor, what they call an electric biosensor system in there. And I was always noticing when I was watching Splashes, he's working in the pool and he finds odor. They have two techniques. They have a bubble technique where they blow bubbles. Otters love to blow bubbles out, but they have one-way valves in their nose. When they get underwater, they close the valve, and that way water can't get into their lungs, right? And they have it in their ears too. Their ears close, and so you can't hear underwater either. So everything's done by sonar with them, with these electrical, all those whiskers they have going on up there, like an electric antenna array, and he'll go by, and human remains when the bones are when it's down to the bones generate their own resonance frequency, which is known as a piezoelectricity. And so it's the same thing that works on a guitar pickup. It's the same principle. When you're picking a string, the vibration pushes on the pickup, which has a quartz crystal in there, which is piezoelectric, and it generates the vibration, and that sends the signal through to the amplifier. It's the same thing. The human bone does the same thing. So we notice that when he gets by odor, his head turns, and he's looking at it, but there's no bubbles. And if it was all scent related, then the bubbles would be coming out first, and then he would be turning his head. But he's turning his head because he's receiving a signal, and he's looking at it, and then he's blowing bubbles to confirm it after he finds it. And to get the scent odor, they blows these bubbles out because the odor will attach to the bubble, and then he sucks it back in to taste it. So he's actually working on a tasting system. So it's a combination of electromagnetism and tasting. It's kind of how they do it. So he'll go along the bottom, and I've seen him do this when we buried stuff in the lake down there at the equestrian center, where they have a big lake there, and they let me train in there. And I'll bury the remains, the samples down in the mud. He'll go along, and all of a sudden that head will just turn, and he'll just hang there, and he's doing this, and then all of a sudden the bubbles will start to come, and so he can confirm it. So I know that it's working, and so we're planning on doing some more testing with it in the spring, and we're going to really try to take a look if we can really diagram and figure out how he does it, because we can't really. It's not what we thought it was. pretty much in shock. Everybody thought it was all odor related, but it's really not. There's another way that he's doing it, and so hopefully we'll figure it out over the next year or two. What he's doing, maybe put a paper out on it or something. But,
That's amazing.
It's a fascinating system what he's doing. So it's been great. It's been a fun thing with him. I retired from work. I was in a printing business, and I sold my interest back to my partners, and because I wanted to spend time working on this project and trying to get this going. This is what I call my last gift to search and recovery. So I'm going to do this until I can't. I'm getting old, and I don't know how many more years I got left, but I'm going to put my time into trying to get some of these problems solved so we can have more recoveries. Because there's nothing worse than a family out there that's got a missing loved one. It's one of the most horrible things I've seen families go through, and it's just a mess. And we gotta keep working. That's what keeps me motivated, because I want to keep going out and helping these families get these things recovered. Because they go through hell. It's amazing.
Yeah. There's nothing like, when I started doing what I do and making flyers and advocating for families and stuff, there's nothing like wrapping your arms around a family and meeting that family in person, and it changes. It kicks you into overdrive.
Yeah.
It's like a swift passion in the hind end. Like you realize that either this is your calling or you're not strong enough to do this.
Yeah. And when I see the moms in trouble, people don't realize a lot what these families go through, especially on the financial side of things. And that's the one thing I always bring up, because a lot of times when we get contacted by the family, they want us to locate the remains. One, they want the family member back, but two, they have to get a death certificate, because they can't get any death benefits, they can't get their insurance, they can't get anything, and they've lost a breadwinner in the household. And we've been with a lot of families several families where they're losing their house, they're losing everything because their breadwinner is gone, has left. Like mom is no longer with them, and so dad can't. They've got to either sell the house or give the house back to the bank or whatever, and they're struggling financially, and they can't get their Social Security, death benefits. They can't get anything, and they're just stuck where they're at, and their lives are just falling apart, and it's horrible. It's just horrible. And a lot of times law enforcement has given up on the case, or they've shelved it for a while because there's no leads, and so the family's not getting any help from them, and so then they turn to groups like ours and say, can you help us? And we'll go out and work it. And some of these cases I've been involved with for 10 years, still out there. Whenever something comes up, or a lead or something comes up and they want to go look at, we'll go back and research. I think I'm in Ocala Forest like every other month now working, because I'm getting ready to go back up there again to work on 2 other cases where, we've searched it once or twice, and now we're going to go back and search it a third time, because sometimes after it's aged a while, it'll start giving up some clues, so we'll go back and see if we can find anything, again. But, and then check some new areas. And anytime a lead comes in, the family will call me and, hey, we got this lead. This guy says that they may have left their remains in this area. Can you go check it? And I'll say, all right, I'll give you the information. And they do. And then I'll call the detective in charge and I'll say, hey, they got this tip. What do you think? And they'll say, yeah, if you want to go check it, go ahead. And we'll go out there and we'll search it. And if we find anything, we just call the detective and let them know, hey, it's here. You better come get it. So, but that's that goes on for a long time. It's really amazing. These families hold together at all after those steps. But,
and organizations like yours, few and far between, and you guys are angels. They're already going through possibly the hardest time they'll ever experience in their life. Like you said, if it's, you're talking about death certificates, and because they don't just hand those out. You don't just get to walk in the office and say, hey, my loved one died. I need the life insurance policy to make sure that I'd have a roof over my head in a month.
Right.
and they don't just go, oh, okay, well, here, let me sign off on. That's not how that works. And
They have to wait in Florida. They generally in Florida, I think it's a 7-year wait in general. Now, if you have extenuating circumstances, like you're financially stuck or you're going to lose your house or whatever, you can go to the state attorney's office and say, I want to try to get a variance on it, and you can file it early. They may let you file early at 3 years or something like that. You can do that, but still, you got 3 years without a co-breadwinner. That's impossible, and no benefits. They will not. It's just a missing person to them. He's not dead, or there's no evidence of a crime. You can't get any benefits for that. So they're really struggling, at that point. Not only they got the loved one missing, but now they got all the financial pressure on them as well. Someone's asking about landfill searches on here.
Yes, Lisa is our DNA expert. She is she'll correct me in the chat, but a microbiologist, something or another.
Yeah. And thank God DNA's come a long way. I can tell you that. I mean, I'm so blown away when I see them work using these quick kits that they have now, quick DNA that they use, and they're actually, within 2 hours they can have a DNA result where before it would take, months to get something like that done, and now they can do it in the field. On some cases, not all cases. There's some cases it doesn't work for, but in a lot of cases it does work. And I see these kits out there now I didn't see before. But landfill searches, and someone was asking about this. Last landfill search I worked was 2 years ago up in Savannah, Georgia. And it was a young boy. He was very young. The mom had thrown him in a dumpster, and he died. And then he ended up in the landfill. And I worked up there for about a week and a half, and we did find him. We found the area that he was in, and they were still going through it. And I had to come back to Florida, so I came back. But then I got a call from the FBI agent who was running the operation, and he said they did find him. So it took us about 3 days later, I think they got him. But we had him in the right area. We just hadn't gotten down to it yet. But their landfill searches are horrible. I mean, they are the worst because of the old days. We would just run the dogs up on the top of the landfill. So, these big mountains of trash, and you would just run the dogs through it. And they're alerting on everything. I mean, there's so much trash in there. And all of it can generate cadaver odor. You've got used Band-Aids, tampons, syringes, all kinds of stuff in there. All that's going to generate blood odor traces and tissue traces that are human, and the dogs are going to pick it up because their noses are so sensitive. And so that didn't work out. We got to the point where we had to, they actually have to almost like strip mine these landfills. They have to go into an area and just literally dig it all back out. And then it's all spread out into one area, and then we run the dogs up and down it. And then and that goes on all day long. We'll have anywhere from 4 to 10 dog teams there, and they'll just keep working all through there, and then they alert on stuff, and then we check it out to see if it's what we're looking for. And that could go on for a couple of weeks, and they're very expensive, and they cost a lot of manpower hours because we're all dressed up. We have our Tyvek suits on, we've got our respirators on, all that, because all that's just nasty. Poor dogs don't get anything. We have to decontaminate the dogs every day, so we got to take them out and wash them down and clean them up and everything, and then they go get fed and go to bed, and then they go out the next morning and got to do it again. And you don't use the booties. I tell people, they ask, don't you use boots on your dogs? No, we don't. We never use them because we found about 6 years ago or so, we found that there's an electrical circuit that runs through dogs, and that helps activate their nose. Their nose is like an electromagnet, and it helps pull that odor in when they're doing it. When you put the boots on them, it cuts off they're not grounded to the ground anymore, and it cuts that circuit. And we found that the dog's abilities to detect scent were drastically reduced, sometimes up to 60%. And so we stopped using the booties because it was making the dogs less effective. And so we don't do that anymore. So the dogs just have to run barefoot through the whole thing, and then when they're done, we scrub them up at the end of the day, or maybe halfway through the day we'll scrub them up, and then they'll go back out and do it again and scrub them up later.
Come here, Winter.
And then at night we have to wash them down and give them a good bath, and then they're put away. But it's they're very difficult, and the problem with landfill searches is that they're very expensive. And then you get the landfill involved in it. Now, landfills do the one nice thing they do now that they didn't used to do 15 years ago is that they map out every day when the trucks come in and they dump. They know exactly where they were dumping on that particular day, what part of the landfill they were dumping in. So it's not like random like it used to be. And so now, if you say I'm looking for this period of time, say I'm looking from June 10th through June 21st of 2021. They know exactly what part of the landfill that's in because that's where they were that particular day. It's managed. So it takes a lot less time to get down into that and dig it out than it used to. The old days where you just had to rip the whole thing apart and just start over. So now they've got a much better system for that.
Yeah, Lisa's family member, Barb Cotton, is a missing person. And she was asking about the 80s, like a landfill that's from the 81.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be a nightmare.
How difficult it would be to.
But that would be very difficult because they're probably not well mapped. And the problem with that is that if the pH is so bad and the gases are so bad that the bodies just decompose so quickly when they're in the landfills, especially if they're kids. Kids they're like Snicker bars. They go away real fast. And because the bones aren't sealed and, the bacteria gets in there and just eats them up real fast. Sorry, I don't mean to be gross. I know some people don't.
No,
so
you're perfectly fine. They're decent. My mods that are in here, Lisa's, she's got a missing family member, and she I told you she'd correct me. She is a clinical laboratory scientist and does genetic genealogy as a hobby obsession. But
that's
yeah,
a good one.
They're
making such strides in the genealogy now. They're getting so good at it. I've seen these cases that they're working on. We had 2 of them in Charlotte County here that we were helping with. That they were using. Part of the technique they were using was the genealogy, and they did get a match, and they actually did. They got 2 convictions out of the genealogy work that was done there. So on these really old cold cases, amazing stuff. I mean, I'm just blown away by that. But a lot of neat disciplines and sciences that are coming together now that are becoming very profitable and seeing a lot of success. But back in the 80s, when I was just getting into this, I remind people that DNA was considered junk science back in those days. It was all hooky fook and nobody believed in DNA and they thought it was stupid. And now it's the standard. I mean, everybody uses it. So a lot of these things, like the otters and stuff like that, they all start off and everyone makes fun of it. But then, 10 years down the road, it's like everybody's doing it, So hopefully, and some of the stuff that we're working on, that will be the case. And 10 years from now, it'll make a difference and we'll have more recoveries and things will go better.
Yeah, because he's got some he's pretty famous. Has newspapers and different news outlets and stuff. The word's going to get around, and I think it's an amazing thing. It just intrigues me.
I just got an email from Japan that Splash was on ABC in Japan, and I never talked to these people. When I was at the crime convention in Orlando, I had a couple guys from the Ukraine were there, and they were military detectives, and they're doing war crimes, but they were taking some classes at the convention to up their skills. And they came over there, and they wanted to trade me a patch from their unit, a couple patches, to get them a chance to meet Splash. And I said, well, you don't have to bribe me. You're more than welcome to come over and meet him. And they came over, man. I said, how do you know about Splash? He says, oh, he's very famous over in Europe. I said, what are you talking about? And apparently National Geographic in Europe had done an article on Splash. And I never even knew about it. They never talked to me or anything. And they'd taken a conglomeration of some local news articles that had been written about Splash. And then they made this article in their National Geographic over there. And they were just blown away with it, and they wanted to meet Splash, so they came over to see us.
That's I
I have no idea,
can't wait to get
absolutely no idea that this is going on out there, and so it was kind of funny. So, so he's got a following now. Unfortunately, he really does, and so that's not unfortunate. I'll try to keep up with it. I know people want to hear things. We came out with coins. We had people hitting us up for Splash Challenge coins. So we just got those done, and they're out there now. So yeah, you can email us and we'll get you a coin if you need one. And then we have patches for the unit. The Otter unit's its own unit in the team now. So we have flat patches for the Otter team, and so it's just he's become a thing. So, and I hear that all the time, that when the articles are written, they never call me by my name. You said that this guy in Florida is training an otter, and it's become a thing. And that's what they said. So I laugh about it because when I was at the convention, I had a thing, and I put a nameplate on it that said "the guy." And then I put another nameplate on Splash's crate and it said "the thing" on it. So, because everybody was coming up and asking about the thing, and is this a thing? And I said, yeah, the thing is over here. So there's the thing, and so Otter, it's the Otter's thing. And, so they even made him his own ID badge at the convention. It was Otter. It was Splash T Otter is what it said on the convention name for him. So he had his own nameplate and everything when he was there. So. But I think he'd been held probably by 500 people by the time he got home. He kind of had enough of. I didn't touch him for about 2 days after I got home. Like, he just came in and ate and slept, and I didn't do anything with it because I think he had enough human activity for a while. He was kind of like, that's enough. And so now he's gotten quite good with it. We were at an FDLE event. I was up in Tallahassee at the headquarters, and the commissioner who runs FDLE, he had to come down and meet Splash and wanted his picture taken with him. So we spent some time with him, and amazing the reception FDLE has given us. They got us so busy, and actually they're kind of responsible for him getting found out because we were working on a case for them when the video was leaked out that he was working there, and the news picked it up, and then it was all everywhere, and that was it. It was out, and so we tried to decide as a group, and we had the board of directors. Do we go with it and talk about Splash, or do we just try and ignore it and hope it goes away, or what do we do? There you go. And we decided, no, let's just put it out there. It's better to just be honest and tell people we're doing it rather than try to, because then it makes you look suspicious, and we don't want to do that. So we said, yeah, we'll just go ahead and let people know that Splash is working. And that's what we did. We just let it go. So
the otter's out of the bag.
Yeah. He's a thing now. He's officially a thing.
He's a thing. I love it.
So, but no. So back on the landfill searches, because I see that she's still on here. But yeah, the landfill searches are very difficult. So 1980, it would be really hard. You would need a lot of equipment. You'd have to dig all that out. And I don't know if you work with your law enforcement agency, if they have the money to do it or not, or you'd have to raise the money to do it. And then you got to get the waste management people to agree to rip the landfill apart, and then you got to get EPA out there, and then you got, oh my God, it's a lot to deal with. And the thing about odor, especially with cadaver odor, that people don't understand is it's a very waxy molecule. It sticks to everything, and it transfers very easily. So when you get human remains down into a landfill like that, and it's cooking down there, and it's getting mixed in with all the methane and the other gases that are very fast moving and lifting it and moving it around. When you get into that area, when you're finally where the remains are, everything in that part of the landfill is going to smell like human remains. So the dogs almost become ineffective at that point, because they're going to alert on everything because it's all contaminated with that. It's all been fumigated with that odor. And so at that point, it's just ripping it apart and taking a rake and going through it piece by piece by piece. And it's really very time consuming. The dogs are valuable in getting into that part of the landfill that you need to be in, but after that, you've got a mound of trash that you've got to go through and try to find what you're looking for, and it's very, very difficult at that point. It's very time consuming. It'll take a week or two, to get through it to make it work. So it's a lot of work.
She says her HRD dog. What does the HRD stand for? Y'all have to excuse me.
Oh, human remains detection
Human
dog.
remains. Okay, took me a minute.
We went through
Didn't click.
we always called them cadaver dogs when I got started in this, and then we went through a softening phase where we tried to be more politically correct, I guess is the term I'm looking for. So they became with human remains detection dogs, and so now we're back on them cadaver dogs again. But they can be HRD dogs. Now they're trying to subdivide them into smaller groups. We've got near-death cadaver dogs, like if the person just died committed suicide, has only been dead for a couple of days. They have dogs that do that because they're working on large sources. And then we have historical dogs that are used to working on late-stage decomposition. And now they've got, they're all cadaver dogs. Basically, with the odor detection with the dogs, we know that they're working on about 20 to 30 VOCs. That's volatile organic compounds. And even though the body has over 500, when it's generating, we've documented, I think, 470, but they know that there's more. But it's just that the gas master spectrometer can't read them. There's certain gases that they just can't pick up. So we know there's more, and we know the dogs are working on about 20 of them that are there through the entire different stages of decomposition. And dogs are real good at generalizing, so they switch over pretty well on the cadaver from one stage to the next. But one of the big specialties, though, is water. Water is a different critter when it comes to dogs, because the general thing when they certify water dogs is they'll take a land sample, and that's a sample that's dry, basically dry, that it's been worked in a jar and it's been on land all the time, and then they'll hide it in the water. They'll stick it in the water and let it sit there for an hour, and then they run the dogs on it, and the dogs run out there and they alert on it because the odor's coming to the surface and the dog alerts on it. But that's not truly a water sample, and this has been one of my beefs I've had, especially since working the otters, because the otters have really taught me this recently in the last couple of years, is that if you're going to have cadaver samples to train on, you need to have samples that are in the water all the time. So you need to have the water, like I have these Cyfit jars that are specifically designed for that. And we put the tissue sample in there, we fill it with water, lake water, whatever, and it stays like that forever. And so it's when the body's decomposed in the water, it's different than when they decompose in land. They have a little bit different of an odor signature. And the dogs have to really work on that, especially like with me, I'm doing 20 and 30-year-old cases. So the decomposition smell is almost different. It's very different than what it is from a land sample. And so the dogs have to really, if you're going to do late stage decomposition, 20, 30-year-old cases, even older than that, you really have to have a dog that's been trained on that kind of odor signature. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble with the dogs. So you really need to get a dog that's, if you're going to qualify a team to go out there for late stage decomposition, you really need to find somebody who's trained the dogs that way. And of course, my dog is trained that way. The otters trained that way. So that they're recognize that odor signature when they find it.
Wow.
But
Well, and see, and I was under the impression that it was the oils on top of the water that the dogs hit on.
If they're fresh, that's a fresh body that's been down there. They generate what we call an oil slick. So you'll see that in the water.
Okay.
And you'll hear it because the bowflies come, and the bowflies are usually buzzing around there, and you'll hear it when you get near it, and you'll know that you'll see this little like oil slick, and you can see it from the air. So a lot of times when we're in the lake, the drones are overhead and they're looking for the oil slick when they get out there. But late stage decomposition, once the tissue starts to go away, the oil slick goes away. So when you get down to just bones, there's just pretty much just basically odor that's coming out. That's all you're going to get, and you're not going to see more oil slicks anymore. So how long does it take for the tissue to go away? Well, if they dump them in the water here off Florida and they're in the salt water, they'll be down to bone probably in a week.
Oh, wow.
Maybe even a little later than that, maybe a week and a half. Between the salt water, the shrimp, all the critters that like to feed on the bodies, the crabs, the shrimp. That's why I don't eat shrimp anymore, but the crabs, the shrimp.
I'm with you on. I'm not a fan of shrimp.
Yeah. Well, first remains I ever brought up was just loaded with shrimp, and then they want to go out and eat, and they want to get that jar with the shrimp with the red stuff, and they want to put it in front of it. And the first thing I think of is that guy that we brought up, and I'm just like, I can't do it anymore, so I just can't do the shrimp thing. But a lot of fish eat them, so they can strip it down to in about a week. Same thing on surface hides, surface remains. Between the buzzards and the other animals that are out there, they'll strip a body down to bones in probably a week, week and a half. So you got to get onto them quick. And then after that, it's just bones, and the bones are drying out there. And they still generate odor, but the bones are still working. That piezoelectric machine is still moving, and a bone is a filtering device, and they will, as it sits in the dirt, it's actually filtering the dirt through the bone, and the bones take on the color of the soil that they're in because of that. And so you'll end up having, if they're in red clay, the bones start to take on a red stain. In Florida, they turn to take on kind of a grayish stain because we have the pine sand here. And that makes them more difficult to find as they're out there. Now, water bones are not that hard if they're on the top still. We usually do most of our bone hunts like that. We start them at night, and the reason we do them at night is we use special lighting under the boat, and we fluoresce it. We flood it with UV lights around 500 angstroms, 460 to 500 angstroms, and that causes the human bones to fluoresce. They glow in the dark. So once they glow, it makes it a lot easier for us to find them when we're down there. So we generally do most of our bone hunts at night. And then we go back in the day if we didn't get them all and look for them, but at least we know about the area that we need to be working in when we get there. So that makes it a little easier.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, this is Nova, correct?
That is Nova. That's my girl.
Beautiful baby girl.
She is coming up. She'll certify this year, and then she'll be out with me on the road working, and it'll be me, Splash, and Nova out there. I'm using Dutch right now. Dutch is 11, going on 11, and he's slowing down quite a bit, so he's going to be retired here soon, and he will have to lay on the couch and watch Animal Planet. I guess that's pretty much what he's going to do. So
he deserves to retire.
Yeah, he's pretty well known dog here in Florida. He worked a lot, and he was Florida's first electronic storage device dog. He was an ESD. And I trained him up for that and started using him for that. And we use them mostly for human trafficking cases. You find stick drives, storage drives, hidden computers and laptops and stuff like that. That's what he was working on. And he was very good. He was assigned to the task force for a summer. And then they decided they didn't want volunteers for that anymore. They wanted sworn officers only. And so they I think it was Pasco trained up the dog for him, and they took that on. And then Dutch got the boot, so we put him back into cadaver work. And then he got famous because he got hit by an alligator, and it made Fox News. And Fox News had his picture of him bleeding on the ground and everything on there, so he got famous from that. And then we retired him from that. And then my dog Dama passed away suddenly, and so we had to pull old Dutch out of mothballs again and put him back to work. So he's been working. But this last road trip I had 5 cases I was working on, and across the United States, all the way from Oregon back to New York, Indiana, Illinois, down through Mississippi, and then back home. And it was a 5,000-mile trip, and he was pretty worn out when we got home. So I said, I can't keep doing that to you anymore, but you're going to have to start staying home. So Nova's coming up, and she's going to be taking over. This next year, she'll be the dog in the box out there working with me. and splash. So we'll be out there. So hopefully we've been talking about doing some videos from some of these cases that we're working on, so people can watch us working in the field and see how we do it and what we're doing and stuff. So we're going to try to do that next year. I've always been kind of, I don't like, I mean, there's a group out there, I know Jared, Adventures with Purpose, and I'm not a fan of how he does his stuff. So I don't like that. And I don't like showing families pain. I don't like, he does what he calls the money shot. And that's where he tells the family that they've done, and the family breaks down and they're all crying. That just infuriates me every time I see that, because I'm just like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
This family is in pain and you're going to put it all over YouTube. I mean, really? I mean, it's a very private moment when we death notifications have to be handled a very specific way, because people have committed suicide after they've been given death notifications, and you can't just blast that stuff to people and then put it on video on top of that. It's just wrong. So I've always had a problem with it. And I thought, if we were going to do it, how would we do it? So I don't mind showing the search part, saying, we're working this, working here, showing the searching part of it. But the family notification stuff would never be shown. We would never show any of that, because once we find, in our case, the way our procedures are set up, we work closely with law enforcement. When we find it, usually the family's not out there, and we call the authorities first. We say, we've got it. We need to come take possession of the scene. And then they come out there and they take it. And then we talk about it. And I said, are you going to call them, or do you want us to call them? And usually they'll do it, because they have counselors and they have people who do this for a living, do these notifications, and they're ministers or they're professional counselors. And we let them do it. Let them go talk about it. We don't do it. We just turn it over to law enforcement and say, you guys take it from here. We've done our part. We found it. And so now it's yours, and they'll take it and finish it. Hopefully they'll do it. Some law enforcement, they're not all great law enforcement agencies. I hate to tell you that, but some of them are just not on the shelf, right?
Hey, I'm there with you. That there was Tanya Whip that's missing out of Auburndale. I was working with Vern Gilbert and Missing in America Network on her case. And I believe the day that Vern called me and was like, you got to sit down. And I was like, I've got to sit down. And he was like, yeah, I thought the top of the man's head was going to blow off and I was going to feel it through the phone when he said that they don't know what NamUs is.
Yeah.
Come again. What do you mean that he don't know what NamUs is? He was like, Christy, I had to go and explain to the man what NamUs was.
Right.
I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. And they don't use that. We almost lost NamUs a couple of years ago because they were going to defund it. Mm-hmm. And we went through when all this pronoun and political correctness stuff started. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
No, you're fine. This is the front porch. We don't. Yeah. we don't come for
I got in trouble. I used to teach up at Oak Ridge, and I got in trouble because I was referring to my dog as a female dog, and and it was talking about Dama, and I had some video of her work, and I said, she's doing this, she's doing that, and I got corrected after my presentation by one of the undergrads, says you can't use that pronouns with the dog, and I said, why not? It's a female dog. And they're like, no, well, you don't know how the dog identifies. This is what she said to me. And I was like, I said, I've been working for the dog for 10 years. I don't know that she's ever had a complaint about it. So I usually call them bitches. We just call them bitches, those bitches working, being nice. I'm just saying she. And they told me I shouldn't do that anymore. It turned into a big thing. And even at NamUs, at one point, they were talking about taking all the gender and the race off of the fines. So when we find remains out there, we're not allowed to say, because I can look at the bone structure. I've been doing this long enough. I can look at skeletal remains, and I can look at them and I can say, okay, it's a Caucasian female, probably between 18 to 30 years of age. She's probably about 5'4". I can look and I wouldn't be able to give half that information when I turned in the report, because they didn't want any of that on there. It would just be remains and you would you wouldn't be able to tell if it was male or female. You wouldn't be able to tell what race it was. It was just remains. And the thought was, well, we'll just use DNA to identify everybody, right? When they come in, I said, well, DNA only works if you have a comparative sample. If you don't have a CS, you can't identify the person, right? So are you going to force everyone in America now to get DNA swabs so you can have a DNA bank somewhere with all this DNA information? Good luck with that. I don't think a lot of people are going to volunteer to give DNA swabs, so the government can track them with their DNA, right? So they're not going to do that. So it was ridiculous. A big fight went on. It went on for about 2 years. And now if you look on NamUs, you'll see that they have, is it the birth sex? I think it is. I think that's what they put on there. The birth sex is what they have now. So they can put female. It's whatever your sex was at birth, that's what they're going to use for your when they put it up on NamUs. And NamUs is great because civilians like me have access to it. We can get on there and use it. I prefer CODIS. I like CODIS a lot better. It has a lot more information in it, but I don't always get access to that. So a lot of times my detective friends will do that, and I'll say, yeah, I'm working this case, and they'll run it up on CODIS and say, here's what you got, kind of thing. But NamUs is great. I mean, I've got 2 cases right here from NamUs that I pulled down today that I'm start working on next week. So it's a great tool. I'm glad they kept it because it came like this close to going away, So.
Yeah, Bethany was at CrimeCon and they did a big presentation, and she didn't realize she wasn't supposed to stream it. So we got to see like 10 minutes of it before they came out and was like, you can't video. And I was like, no, don't make her stop. Cause I'm like, I'm just sitting here like, cause I'm still learning, every day. I can make a flyer. I can make phone calls. I can reach out and be like, hey, I need help. This family needs help. But all the interior things, like I'm a sponge when it comes to it. I'm still learning every day. And
well, one of the things that's really helped out with us, and we just had a success with it last week. We have caseworkers that work for Peace River, and these people are following cases on it. And sometimes remains pop up, and they don't have them identified to anybody, and they'll put them up there that these people were found, and they'll do a facial reconstruction on it or something.
That's amazing too.
Donna was on it, and she saw that when she calls me up about 9 o'clock at night. She says, I'm looking at this case, and it looks an awful like this person in Miami that went missing about a year and a half ago. And I said, we'll package it up and email the ME and see if he's aware of it, because he may not be aware that it's there. And sure enough, we got a phone call back the next day, and he's like, where'd you get this? What's going on? And it turned out to be the person that we were looking for. So,
that's amazing.
So the caseworkers keep working these things all the time. They keep going back, and so as these remains pop up and people don't know who they are, they're unidentified remains, but they try to put them to cases. And a lot of our people as volunteers, they're just going through and looking and seeing if, staying up at night because they can't sleep or whatever, and they're going through these cases, and all of a sudden they hit one and go, hey, that looks like the guy from here. And they'll send, now it is, when I tell them, I say, when you find it, just send it to the ME's office over there and see if they know that that's going on, because sometimes they don't keep up with it. They don't know that these remains have been found. So we try to, and some people have turned up in other states. The remains have shown up in states we didn't even know they were in. And all of a sudden that's our missing person. And, how they got there and all that, well, we never know how that happened. But everybody's been looking for them in Florida, and they turned up in North Dakota somewhere. And it's like, how the hell did that happen? But it's just the way it works. So. But so any questions I need to answer? It's getting late, and I got to ring.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Lisa had a few questions. She said, are the dogs trained to find ATVs, etc., in the woods?
Not ATV specifically, but if we have, the dogs can be worked pre-scented, meaning that if I have a piece of clothing that the missing person was wearing and I show the dog, he'll track it. Now, if the guy was running an ATV, the dog will alert on that ATV and tell me that guy was on that ATV. So I will know for a fact that he was there. But as an ATV, just as an ATV, it won't track it, but it will track the odor of the person, if it's attached to the ATV, then they will track that and do it that way. So that's one of the things they do. Now the other case, I think she's got here. Do you guys only work with law enforcement? And that's not true. We work for the families, and we do work for law enforcement. I get a lot of calls from advocates every once in a while, and they'll say, hey, this case, this guy's missing. And I'll say, are you a family member? And they'll say, no. I say, well, have the family call me, because we work directly with the family. So we don't just randomly run into cases that we don't, it's kind of like if it says stay off the grass, you stay off the grass. If you're not invited to go in there, don't go in, because you're just stirring it up. But we've worked on, I think in Florida, if you go down the top 20 cases of missing persons, we've probably been working on all of them at one time or another. But yeah, if the family contacts me directly, we'll take a look at it and see if we can help them.
Okay. Yeah, Lisa's asking about Jeremy Lawrence out of St. Louis County, Minnesota.
I don't know that case. I'm not working on it right now. We were working on, I saw you had the McCollum case on there, Jared. We were working on that one, and got a case up in New York I'm working, and then we had a case in Wisconsin that we were working. So those are some pretty well-known cases. I won't use their names right now because I don't have permission to talk about it. But yeah, those it depends. Sometimes it's law enforcement that brings us in, and sometimes it's the family. It just depends. So
yeah, a lot of people have a misconception that search groups only work with law enforcement, and not all you guys are like that.
Well, it depends on what state you're in too. Like North Carolina specifically, North Carolina says you got to do that. And New York State says you have to do that, and those kind of things. That's another problem I ran into with Splash, is that I can't just take them to whatever state I want to go to and use them in the search. Some states have laws against using exotic animals for things, so I always have to file for a permit when I go ahead of time. Like if I go to New York State and I'm taking Splash to work, I have to file for a permit to take them into the state before I'm allowed to go. So otherwise they can impound them and take them away from me while I'm there.
No.
I'll go ahead and call ahead and say, well, I usually have to fill out some paperwork and send them in shot records and stuff like that. And usually I get away, except in New York State. New York State's really tough. They're very hard about that. But most of the other states have been pretty nice about letting me bring the otter in. So, all right, if I'm working for law enforcement, I usually just have the captain from the law enforcement agency call the wildlife commissioner, whoever's in charge of it, and say, yeah, he's working for us. So that usually solves the problem pretty quick. So when we get in there. Yeah, so if the family calls, we'll take a look at it if it's something we can do.
And the contact information is actually on the website. The website's in the description. So
there's a
definitely
page, there's a tab there that says, if someone's missing. And one of the things I always tell people is you don't have to wait 24 hours to report someone missing. So don't fall for that. If you have a family member that was supposed to be home at 5 o'clock and they're not home at 5 o'clock and you can't get them on the phone, report them missing. You don't have to wait till the next day to do that. Sometimes the old thing that started that was that because adults have a right to wander, and that's what the law says. And so if they show up and that person hasn't come home and say, well, maybe he's out with a boyfriend, or he's done this or he's done that, or whatever. And they'd say, just wait 24 hours and see if he shows up, kind of a thing. But nowadays they don't do that. If you don't show up, they don't show up, you call and get that thing rolling, get the bolo out there so that they can start looking for them. Don't wait 24 hours, because that's just too much time. Because most of the time, like especially in abduction cases, one of the reasons that we have CART, the Child Abduction Response Team with FDLE, and we participate in that, and because the abducted person, if it's an actual abduction, not one of these, a lot of these Amber Alerts, it's mom versus dad,
custodial, non-custodial.
They didn't bring them home, and so now they're issuing an Amber Alert or something. A lot of those are family disputes. They're not as dangerous, but if it's an actual predator that's picked up a kid, we've got maybe 4 hours to find that kid before they're dead.
Yep.
So we move really quick. When we get one of those cases and my phone goes off and it says you need to get down to Fort Myers or whatever, like right now, I'm out the door, because
Right.
we are battling the clock at that point, trying to find this kid before he's dead. And
Very time sensitive.
yeah, it's so important, and that's why I always say when these alerts come up like that, and it's an actual abduction. I put it out. We put it on our Facebook X. We put it out on X everywhere, and I put heads up. That's the first thing I do. Eyes up, and start looking because this is serious. This is really serious at this point. We're going to save that kid, but it can be difficult. So somebody asked my favorite dog breed. I'll get in trouble because I'm a German Shepherd person. So I used to say. In search and rescue, there were two types of dogs. You either had a German Shepherd or the wrong dog. That's what I used to say. For that.
Oh no! And here I've been telling the old man that I want a Malinois.
Yeah.
And I want to bring him to get
if you're ready
trained.
for it.
And he's
But,
like, "Where are you going to take it to get trained?" And I was like, "Well, I have Mike."
Yeah, you right down here. We'll work with him. I'm training 3 right now. So I mean, it's. I'm used to Malinois, but the handlers, you got to be on top of that dog. But I don't really anymore. I don't have a favorite dog breed. I'm still prone to Shepherds, and I just feel like they're the Mack truck of dogs. They can do everything, and so I've never had a problem with them. However, when I finally do fully retire, I would like to get a gun dog, a nice lab, and go back to bird hunting and doing stuff like that. When I was a kid, I did that, and I'd like to go back to do that again. And so I may just have a lab at that point. I don't know. We'll see.
My grandpuppy is a German Shepherd, and when we go home to Kentucky, my son, when I get ready to leave, he literally holds the dog.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Why do you do that?" He's like, "Because I hear you over there whispering in her ear. Grandma going to take you back to Florida and make you cadaver dog. Come on." Like, you didn't hear that. She did not hear that.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Yeah. So I'm still prone to Shepherds, but it's really, if they ask a good cadaver dog, I always tell them, I said, you want a dog with 90% of canine work is having the right dog. If you got the wrong dog for the job, you're going to struggle through the whole career of that dog. And I always say the best thing to test a dog for is you get a ball and you throw that ball and he'll hunt for it. And watch him hunt for it. If he hunts it, and then when he finds it, will he bring it back to you? If he plays retrieve and he brings it back to you, and he'll bring it to your hand, and he wants to engage with you and wants you to play ball with him. That's the dog you want because you've got a reward system and you've got something to work with. If you get these dogs that don't give a crap about you, they don't want to play ball, and you're just stuck trying to do food with them all the time, they don't make good cadaver dogs. They really don't. So you need to have a dog that's got some drive, has a good reward system, and if you've got those things going for you, you got everything to shape that dog into a nice work dog and get going from there. But I get a lot of people that go to the pound and they just get a cute little fluffy doodle and they want to turn him into a cadaver dog, and I'm like, he doesn't have the drive for this. I mean, he's just not gonna do it.
I have a toy Dachshund, and we've trained her from teeny tiny, and she's command trained. So you could say, "Where's it at? Go find it. Go look for it." And I mean, she's on the hunt, but it's part of her breed, though, to be that way. The only thing that worries me about her is a hole. She's gonna go in the hole. Like, you're not going to stop her if she thinks something's in the hole, and it's getting back out of the hole that worries me.
Well, we've got a Fox Terrier Chihuahua mixed dog on the team named Beamer, and he's little thing, and we use him for a lot of stuff. He's a very good nationally certified cadaver dog, and he's had his share of cases that he's worked and found remains, and but we use him for those special spots where we can't get a big dog in there. We need a little dog to run under the house or whatever. And he's the dog that does that because a lot of serial killers like to bury people under their houses and the crawl spaces under there. So that's what Beamer does. We're getting into one of those things. Where's Beamer? Send them through there and see if there's something in there or not. So he's good at that. I never go crawl spaces. I don't like crawl spaces. You won't get me going in those things. I won't do it. But we'll send Beamer. Let him go do it.
Hey, there you go. That is awesome.
Yeah. But anyway, So that's, yeah, any dog, as long as it's got a good reward system, is a great dog to use. And they can do that. Any other questions I can answer for you? I'm
I
glad to answer.
I think we got everybody's questions. I've learned so much now. I was so honored to have you come up tonight and talk to us, and it was an amazing honor to have you here. You know, we've interacted many a times, and I'm gonna get down there. I'm gonna get down there, and I'm gonna meet you in person
Sure.
sometime soon. I'm gonna do this, and it's
Always
an
welcome.
absolute honor, and I appreciate everything you guys do, and you're amazing. You guys are amazing with everything that you're doing, and the leaps and bounds, and the future that
Yeah.
you're bringing to the missing community and search and rescue.
Well, the other thing I didn't talk about, I should have, and I don't get in trouble if I don't say mention it, was that we trained our horses to do scent work the last 2 years. So we've got a whole unit now of scent horses that work cadaver and work human remains, and we do a lot of work for FDLE now. So we did the same thing with the horses that we can do with the dogs. And we always end up talking about the otter, but the horse team has done an amazing job with the scent work in the last 2 years. And so we have a fully functioning unit. I know there's some SARP groups that have been messing around with it, and they may have one horse or two horses. We actually have about a dozen horses that do this now. So they can clear huge wilderness areas very quickly, which is something that is very helpful with when we're trying to find remains that may have been dumped out in the wilderness area somewhere. So, and I'm amazed at how fast they work. I mean, we worked them down in Collier a year ago, and they found everything so fast. I was just blown away with how fast it happens. And it's the dogs can do the work, but the dogs can't move as fast as the horses do. The horses can keep going. And the biggest problem we have in South Florida, Southwest Florida, from Orlando south, we have palmetto bushes, and I know a lot of people from all over the place, but they may not have these palmetto strands and understand what it is. But it's a very thick, like mini palm tree that's out there, and they're thick, and the dogs can't get through them, and the odor gets hung up in there, and the dogs have a hard time localizing odor when they get in there. And the horses don't. The horses walk above it, and their heads are up above it. So when they're looking for remains, they just walk through those palmetto strands, and then all of a sudden they hit odor, and they just walk right over, and it's right here, and they just point to right where it is. And
That's amazing. See, I'm ashamed to say that I knew you guys used horses, but I didn't know they were scent trained. That is amazing.
Yeah, we scent trained them. We've been working on it for the last couple of years, and so, but they've become very in demand. And so when the Texas flooding happened, we got a lot of calls for us to bring the scent horses out there to work the riverbeds and stuff. And we wanted to do it, but the logistics was just so difficult that we decided not to, because it's so hard on the horses. You got to trailer them out there, and that's traumatic on itself. And then you get them there, then you got to get them right, and then you got to work them, and then you got to have a place to put them up at night, and you've got to decontaminate them and wash them and have a wash station. And there's a lot of logistics involved when you have a team around, which we weren't aware of at the time, and we've learned in the last couple of years about it. So we're trying to get better at that this year, and so that we can do more of these types of deployments, that are farther away, because we get requests. We've been getting requests, but we just didn't feel that we could do it safely and get the horses there and back, but in one piece. And so we're going to see if we can work that out this year and come up with a plan and get everything we need in the trailer, so that when we have to decontaminate the horses and we need to handle all the little emergencies that happen, with animals, they always get injured or something happens. We had a really good horse team 3 years ago, scent trained the first group, and we had 3 horses that were fabulous and worked very hard on them. And then they were coming back from the other coast, and they got through Okeechobee, and this guy ran the red light and torpedoed the truck and trailer, and the truck broke, I think 3 or 4 times, and the girls were injured. The horses came out of it okay, but the horse team was gone. I mean, it was just over, just that fast after putting a couple of years in with it, and then all of a sudden it was just over. And so we had to rebuild the team, and we've been working at that for the last 2 years, and we've got a good group right now. They're doing really, really well, and very proud of them.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so that's the other little thing that we did, and I think that you're going to see, because we did it and we've been showing everybody how we did it. I think you're going to see a lot more scent horses out there with search groups in the next couple of years. You'll probably see that all over the place start popping up. Just remember, it started here.
You guys, it's exclusive. You saw it right here with Mike.
Just like the otter. I don't let the horse thing. I don't pay much attention to all that stuff. But the otter thing is my idea, so I'm taking credit for that. But that's my idea. But 3 years from now, they'll talk about it. But the only thing I got out of it, all that stuff, when the otters first were seen and the news picked it up, I got phone calls from all over the place, and then I got a call from Disney. And Disney called and said that they were interested in buying the rights to the story about Splash. And I said, well, I don't really feel like I have a story to sell yet. So we're just getting kind of started and all this thing. So I said, call me next year. Maybe we'll talk about it.
Oh, wow.
Not interested in doing anything this year, but maybe next year I'll sell the rights to his story to somebody. We are doing a children's book, though. I don't know if I told you that or not. We got a children's book coming out about Splash.
No.
So much inquiry about it. So we decided to do a children's book. So that should be out first of the year, I guess. That'll be out.
Oh, well, I'll have to have one of those.
Yeah, we're going to put a little plushy otter with it, I think. We were talking about that last week. I said we should put a little plushy otter with it.
Oh, definitely. And I'll put it right back here in my background with my Surviving the Survivor and all my things.
Everybody seems to have these ideas how we need to market the otter, and I just laugh. I'm like, he's just a tool in the toolbox. I mean, that's all I think about. I don't really think about all this other stuff. All I'm thinking about is the next case. That's all I'm thinking about. I get this one done, the next case. That's all I think about. I don't think about all this other stuff. So it's just foreign to me. Anyway. All right. Well, I guess that's everybody. Thanks, everyone, for putting up with me tonight. I hope I haven't been too boring and put you to sleep anyway.
No, it's been an honor to have you here. I appreciate you coming up and spending time with us. And I know it is getting kind of late. I don't want you to get disowned when you go out there to get him. And
well, he's been squeaking already.
Oh, has he? Oh, no.
He's ready to come in and eat. And the dogs are still out. I got to bring them in and feed them too. So they're due to come in and get something to eat. So I'll take care of them right now. Get that done. So, all right, guys. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with us and telling us all about what you guys do in the organization and all the trainings. And I've had a blast. I think everybody really enjoyed you being here. And if I have a lot of replay crews, so if I get questions, I'll just make you a list and send them to you.
Oh, yeah, please do. Always happy to answer questions. So. All righty. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys. So as promised, that was Mike, the founder and president of Peace River Search and Rescue. They do phenomenal work. I know he's not into the merch, but you guys know how I am about my t-shirts. I love my graphic tees. So I pulled this up. I'm going to share this with you guys. I'll drop the link in the description, and I'll go ahead and drop it in chat too for anybody that's interested. They have gear, y'all. Look at this. Would you look at that? Splash. It's utterly amazing. It's utterly amazing, y'all. And then the Canine handler, and this is Zazzle. So this is a site that, $25. You can't beat it with a stick. You absolutely cannot beat it with a stick. But look at that sweet face, y'all. Would you look at that? and they do amazing work. They really, really do amazing work. I've reached out to Mike so many times and been like, "Hey, help," and he's always there to answer questions. And I said, here sometime soon when he's not out busy with a case, I'm gonna go and visit and be able to meet in person and interact with Splash and see the dogs and everything. And I'm really excited about that. And I'm really honored to be invited to do that. We talked about it a couple of years ago, and then with Craig's accident and stuff, we just never have made it over there yet. Yeah. So many ideas. Cases do cost money. Travel costs money. Food, upkeep. I mean, the otter ain't going to feed itself. Farm raised salmon. I am with Splash on that. Lisa says I'm coming with. I'm inviting myself. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Dandy. Thank you, Far Cash. Cash making an appearance here. Haven't seen you in a long, long time. But I really thought it was something really cool that I could bring to the, to this side of the community. All the links are in the description. I'll double check and make sure that the Facebook, the Twitter, and the YouTube page are in there along with the merch link. So that way anybody that wants to follow, subscribe, share, do all the things. Mike's constantly updating on the page, which you guys know if I try to show videos, it's going to start crinkling up on us. There's lots of videos and information. The website's phenomenal. And Lisa, definitely reach out to him about that case, because they do great work. They do absolute great work. And the donation link is also in the description. They could, if you're able to, click on that link, send them a donation, because I really don't want them to see them lose the organization due to this insurance, because that would be a travesty. And it would take away from so many families that are not financially able to fund their own loved ones' searches. But guys, I love you all, and I appreciate everybody for being here. If you're on replay crew, if you have any questions, if you're here during the live and your question didn't get answered, please comment below, put a question mark in front of it, and I will take those questions and I will forward them to Mike, and we'll be able to get those questions answered for you. I may put like the responses on my community wall, or one night when we go live, I can answer questions that way. I'll talk to Jeremy's mom. Sounded like he wanted to hear from her versus me, though I might reach out at first anyway, so that I don't get her hopes up if he thinks it's a great option. Yeah, Lisa, just reach out. His email and phone number both are on the website. They're on the website, and then there's also like you said, the tab with the contact information on there as well. So definitely reach out. But guys, I appreciate you all so very much. I had an extremely long night last night. We had an Amber Alert that was here in Florida that turned out to be a giant hoax. So I am running on just a few hours sleep. I'm not my bubbly self tonight, but this was really important to me to be able to have Mike on. I was honored for him to say, yeah, I'll come on and talk about what we do, because I think it's like, there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to search and rescue, and to search and rescue animals, and then Splash being the one and only search otter in the world. Then I thought it was really interesting to show his little chunky self that's just so cute, and talk about what he does, because it's so interesting. And I've watched the Twitter. I've followed the Twitter. I'm a big, like, my notifications are on. If I see something that Mike's posted, I'm on there. I'm watching it. And to watch him train, and, the target training and stuff was just intriguing to me. So I really thought that that's something that you guys would enjoy hearing about too. You're so welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad that everybody enjoyed enjoyed and was able to hang out with us tonight. But guys, I'm going to end it out here because y'all know I'm horrible about ending a live. So if you see something, say something. It takes a village to raise a child. We never give up. And I'm going to catch you guys on the flip side.